Ask Reddit by C101. Florida just passed a law that child molesters could be sentenced to death. Do you agree or disagree, and why? They are doing it again, and the mods are doing nothing about it again. There is no verbiage in the bill about molestation or rape. The bill says child abuse, and it follows a bill that defines transgenderism as child abuse. This is a straw-stuffing for laws being passed in Florida to start a trans genocide. Jesus fuck. Let's start lining up the politicians and the clergy, see how long the law lasts. In a perfect world, such a law would be enforced unilaterally and only with undeniable proof. But in perfect world, there would be no child molesters. I don't trust the government in general to responsibly wield the death sentence. I certainly don't trust Florida with a modern fascist party at the helm with it. Disagree. If you make the punishment for molestation the same as for murder, then the perp is more likely to murder the child after the act, and not leave a witness. I didn't think about this part. I don't have much of an opinion regarding the death penalty, but this is a good point that I never realized. I would have to see the language of the bill to come to a conclusion on this. The term child molester makes you think grown adult perving on a grade school age child. Unfortunately, the law isn't so black and white. How many teenage couples are 2 years apart and a year away from being executed by the state? Language is everything. I'll never forget a story I read 25 odd years ago about a single father of 2 daughters. He was always taking picture of them. One day one of the girls mooned him as a joke while he was taking a picture. The company that developed the film reported him to the police. It was the only nude photo of his daughter that they found when they raided his house. At the trial, yes, this actually made it to a trial, they put into evidence that he had Playboy magazines in his room and that this somehow proved he was a sexual deviant. This one innocent picture taken accidentally just ruined this guy's life. Not to mention his daughter's lives. If I remember correctly, once all his money was gone and his house was sold to pay for lawyers, the guy pleaded out to lesser charge. Don't remember if he got custody of his daughters back. Moral is that the government can't be trusted to be reasonable and fair with emotional subjects like this. Once they become politicized, then justice goes out the window. Here are already plenty of laws against child molestation. Don't need a death penalty. Edit. They won't let me post a link, but Google how a photo can ruin your life. I'm going to say the unpopular and unpleasant reality. Sentencing child molesters to death will result in less people coming forward. It's bad enough when the abuser tells you if you tell anyone daddy will get in trouble. Now try if you tell anyone, they will kill daddy. Or the child molester just kills the child to make sure no one ever knows what they did. A lot of child molesters are related to the victims, or friends of the family. I don't think it's really fair to put that on a kid. You reported your creepy uncle for molesting you, so now we're going to kill him. Your uncle is going to die because you didn't keep your mouth shut. If a kid does let that prevent them from turning him in, then the law is worse than useless. It's actually helping the bad guy. And if a kid doesn't let that prevent them from turning him in, and the uncle gets executed, that's probably not going to be really great for the kid's emotional well-being. Yes. As you may know, exactly this scenario caused selective mutism in Maya Angelou as a child. She said later, in essence, if my voice was so terribly powerful that it killed a man, I couldn't bring myself to speak at all. I just need to put this out there. Romeo and Juliet laws only apply to straight couples. Quick, someone draw up Romeo and Mercutio laws. Do I think a child molester deserves to die? Yes. Do I think there is a court or legal system on this planet even remotely qualified to pass that judgment? No. Some crimes definitely warrant death. There isn't a single person or system in existence qualified to make the call of which cases warrant it. I believe that we should be beyond killing people as a state anyway. I don't trust anything coming out of Florida. They use the terms groomer and pedophile way too loosely to be able to accurately judge whether someone is a child molester. Yeah, I'd dread hearing this used against a trans woman who used the bathroom at the same time as a child. I really don't trust Florida's government to determine who deserves to be labeled a predator, let alone who should die. I disagree because I disagree with the death penalty. Yeah, the state should not be in the business of killing anyone. Deleted. I have a family member who was basically in jail most of my childhood. My aunt never dated and always talked about her fiancé who we never met. She told us he had a life sentence and one day she would take us to meet him. Well, one day he just got out of jail. Turns out he was falsely accused of a crime and sentenced to life in prison. He ended up doing 16 years before he was released. I still don't know what he was falsely accused of and I only asked him once and he told me to never ask him about that again. So out of respect I have never asked or looked up what he was accused for. I'm pretty sure the family knew he was falsely accused since one time my uncle on the other side got into it with my grandpa and he brought up something about my grandpa's daughter dating a jailbird. My grandpa beat the living shit out of him. Either way, I'm glad he got out. He spent a lot of time getting to know us when he got out. It's pretty sad for everyone when someone is falsely accused. Considering Florida just spent the last year calling members of the LGBT community child molesters, absolutely not. It's extremely clear what their intentions are. That's not even considering the fact that just because you think someone should die for an act, doesn't mean we should give the government the power to enact that death. Others have brought up the fact that this will also make it more likely for relatives not to be reported, while making strangers more likely to kill their victim. When a law is passed that puts child molesters to death the same time that claims of grooming and child abuse towards the entire LGBTQ+ community are hitting their peak. It's not child molesters they're trying to kill here. I had to scroll way too far to see this comment. As an example, a lot of states have sodomy laws. How have they been historically used? To persecute gays. I don't believe in the death penalty because our system gets it wrong far too much and innocent people are put to death. I also don't approve of this law because Florida has made trans care impossible, and classify it as sexual abuse of a child. So you could put a parent to death as a child sexual predator for getting their child health care that the state doesn't agree with. It's disgusting. I am against the death penalty. Period. End of. I agree. I understand a desire for vengeance. I also understand that the enormity of such crimes seems a person unworthy of ever being free. But the fact that even one person has been on death row and then exonerated proves the system is not infallible, and without an infallible system, there is no place for the death penalty. I disagree, because Florida's idea of a child molester is a drag queen, and not the people actually fucking children. They will kill a drag queen but let Matt Gaetz exist. I disagree with state-sponsored executions. Disagree. For one, it makes abusers much more likely to just kill the kid afterwards so they can't tell anyone. It'll also make it much harder for children to tell anyone, since there's a really good chance it's a family member or adult they know well. They don't want to be responsible for their uncle or coach's death, and their abuser will definitely use that against the child. This law will just make things worse for kids. Personally, I don't believe we should be using the death penalty for anything. Let's catch up with the rest of the developed world already. Florida is absolutely going to use this to kill trans and other LGBTQ people. Exactly this. While there's a healthy debate in the comments here about the merits of the death penalty for child molesters, but given the current political climate in Florida, it's painfully clear that the government there has no interest in protecting children and would definitely use this law to eliminate their political enemies by labeling anyone they don't like as child molesters and executing them. Fascism isn't coming to America, it's already taken hold so much so that they don't have to hide anymore. We all know that it goes far beyond actual CMs. They really mean drag queens and trans people, who of course aren't the so-called monsters these morons think they are. Fucking thank you. There's a reason they've put so much effort weaponizing language to make people associate queer folk with sex criminals. It all seems so noble, until they start classifying existing as an LGBTQ+ person in front of a minor as child molestation, or parents being supportive of their child's transition. Actual child molesters, convicted in a court of law, do with what you will. But I don't trust Deathsentence, and I've got a bad feeling about this. There is no until here. That is literally the motivation for the law. Simply existing in a public toilet is now a sex crime if you are a gender non-conforming person. The whole point is to threaten people they don't like with the death penalty for existing in public. Soon enough I'm sure they will even do away with the in public part. I agree a child molester deserves to die, but I'm against the death penalty because the system isn't good enough to not kill innocent people. Look up the Innocence Project to see many instances of people being freed from death row by DNA evidence. I do not understand how a small government conservative can ever think it is acceptable for the government to kill somebody. I disagree with the death penalty on principle, but especially for non-murder offenses. Remember the satanic panic when kids were talked into making all kinds of false allegations that law enforcement took as true? That could easily happen here. Also, I used to work in family court and it's shocking the number of times a parent makes or has the kid make a false outcry to try to get custody. Usually it's the mom, but I've seen dads do it to mom's new boyfriend husband too. Finally, there's the chilling effect this would have on real outcries. Kids are already hesitant to report abuse by a parent or trusted adult. This just gives the offender another thing they can use to keep kids quiet. Remember, you can't tell anybody about this or they could kill me. You wouldn't want that, would you? Without seeing the actual language, my gut is that in FL the intent is less to protect children and more to witch hunt whoever they deem pervy drag queens, trans people, etc. When you consider they are making dressing outside of your assigned sex at birth a sex crime, and are removing the unanimous jury requirement for the death penalty. Yes, this is a way to execute people they don't like. The death penalty is pointless, no matter the crime. It's never an effective enough deterrent, always costs taxpayer money that could have been spent on something else more useful in the long term, and people will always commit crimes without any regard to their consequences. Instead of a death penalty, how about we figure out what caused them to commit the problem in the first place? Instead of using lazy punishment methods to answer problems, we should be focusing more on evolving our ways of solving and preventing problems before they happen. Absolutely agree that we should be finding effective treatment options for paraphilic disorders. It is a mental illness, whether people agree with that or not. It's a fact. If we just kill these people, it won't stop the fact that it's a mental illness that will keep happening. Do I think they should be locked up? Yes. Mental illness isn't an excuse for abuse of any kind. However, all mental illnesses deserve treatment. I'm in favor of harm reduction laws as well. If people could talk about these urges in therapy, especially while young, without fear of getting sent away for life, they will have a much better chance at recovering from these urges and inappropriate attractions. Knowing Florida, they're going to try and use this on innocent queer people while actual predators, including multiple of their own politicians, are completely ignored. Step 1. Call all LGBT+ community groomers. Step 2. Pass a law that identifies trans healthcare for minors as child abuse. Already done. Step 3. Pass a law for the death penalty for child molestation. In progress. Step 4. Execute members of LGBT+ community plus those providing trans healthcare. Step 5. Look at all these deviants getting executed. We should just skip the courtroom and find a single, final solution to the problem. Seeing as this is the same state that is trying to classify drag queens as pedophiles and child molesters, I have a sneaking suspicion there's a little bit more to this than just protecting the children. Does anyone trust any branch of government in Florida to even correctly identify a child molester, or would this really just be a roster of drag queens they want to execute? Checks notes. Matt Gaetz is a pedophile sex trafficker and he's also serving in Congress at the pleasure of the citizens of Florida. So no, I don't trust Floridians at all to make that determination. I would rather see a million guilty people live than see one innocent person die. Plus, today death row and the endless appeal process is an absolute farce, and ends up costing way more and not even really accomplishing what was advertised. Might as well just give a life sentence without the possibility of parole, which is a worse sentence anyway, and makes sure you're not executing innocents on top. In Florida, that could be someone giving their kid a copy of Where the Wild Things Are. It is crazy how obsessed Republicans have become with finding sexual issues that involve minors. You seriously think they passed this law with the intention of only punishing child molesters? This the state that also decided drag queens reading to children is a form of grooming. It's also going to be open season on the LGBTQ community. At least in the Salem witch trials, confessing to the accusation could save your life.